Okay, when we left you last, you were doing two-step equations, and here is a typical one. 8a minus 3 is equal to 20, let me think, 1. That would be a good one. All right, I want you to write that one down. I want to pause for a second while you give this one a try. All right, so here's how you should have started. You should have started with adding 3 to both sides. Raise your hand if you did that. All right, only 2 people? All right, I'm going to pause for a second. Everybody stop and try that one again. I'm going to pause while you try. I checked the left side of the room this time, and they were all doing it right. 8a equals 24. Then what did you do? Divided by 8. I like to use the slash. If you want to use a divide by sign, it's fine with me. A equals 3. All right, I'm going to pause for a second. Start the recording again. All right, so we're ready to explore something like this. It's pretty close to the same thing. Do you know how to start? What do you think? Okay, so which is what? It's going to be a little different, but go ahead. I'm not going to start by times by anything. Yep. Good. And then now what's the new equation? And this is where a lot of people miss it because they think, I'm just going to go right to the answer, and the answer is 8, and I'm going to say n equals 8. No, totally wrong. Instead, you show both sides, and something equals something. What do you have? What do you think? It's okay. Why don't you take over from here? I bet you've got it. N over 8 equals 8. Good. All right. Next step. Next step is to get rid of that divide by 8. So what do? Multiply by 8. There you go. Raise your hand if you had that one right. All right, I'm going to pause for. Okay, so our next step is to have more negatives. Negatives running all over the place. I'll give you an example. Negative 3m minus 2 equals negative 24. And the real challenge here is just to keep your negatives straight. So I'm going to remind you of some stuff with the negatives that is important. So for instance, if I have negative 2 and I times it by negative 3, when you multiply like this, do you remember that when you multiply, if you have 2 negatives, it goes back to positive? It's like the opposite of an opposite. So what if it's like this? Would that be positive or negative 16? All right, some of you aren't looking. Look, problems on the board. All right. If you multiply 2 times negative 8, it's negative 16. 1 negative means it's negative. I bet you can catch on to the pattern. What if I have 3 negatives? Is it going to be positive or negative? Negative. It just keeps going back and forth. If there's only 1 negative, it's negative. 2 negatives, it changes to positive. 3 negatives, the answer is negative 6. If you had 4 negatives, what would it be? Positive. So every set of 2 negatives cancels each other out. All right. So back to the problem I was showing you before. It's got negatives all over the place. So if I add 2 to both, I want you to see if you can do it from there. I'm going to pause while you give this one a try. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I checked that side of the room. I'll come back to you in a minute, but I got to get going again. I am adding 2 to both sides. That cancels, and you have negative 3m equals negative 22. Then you divide by negative 3. Here's the key. Did you notice that it was 2 negatives, and therefore the answer is positive 22 over 3? All right. That's the only difference for today is being careful with your negatives. No, it's positive. There's two negatives. It's kind of, two negatives is kind of like the opposite of the opposite. So if I start with black and I say, what's the opposite of that? You say white. I say opposite of that again. It goes back to black. It just keeps flipping back and forth. So 2 negatives makes it positive 22 over 3. Why did the 22? The 22 came from the negative 24 and the positive 2 right here. That made negative 22. Because think of it this way, it's like 24 on the negative team and only 2 on the positives. They fight because they're on opposite teams, and there's lots of negatives left. How many negatives are left? Negative 22. Oh yeah, we don't know what negative 22 divided by negative 3 is. Now if you used a calculator, you get a decimal for that. It'd be like, I don't know, 7 point something. Let me think. 7 times 3 is 21. Yeah, 7 and 7.333, I think, is what your calculator would have said. But the thing I really want to make sure you get is that it was positive. Because you had 2 negatives divided, you get positive. All right, last thought. You will be using a calculator. If I want to put in negative 22, do you guys know you have to put the negative last? Like 22, and then how do I make it negative? With the little minus key. Not the minus like subtract key. There is a negative key on your calculator that's just for making numbers negative. All right, so I would recommend you find that on your calculator. All calculators are different. If you can't find the negative key to make it like negative 22, you're going to have a problem today because the negatives are running all over the place. All right, so I know you can do these in your head, which is awesome. Not everybody can, so you have to have that as a backup just in case. All right, I'm going to pause for a minute and hand out the worksheet. So here we go. Number 1 is up on the board, and I'm going to start. Do you remember me saying that you start by adding and subtracting unless there's a parentheses? Remember that? So I don't see any parentheses, so I'm going to start with adding or subtracting. I'm going to get rid of this 8. How do I do that? Add 8. Add 8. Draw a line. Notice we gave you more space than normal. Do you see that? You have a lot of space underneath each problem. And now you're going to be able to use it to show work like this. Negative 9 plus 8. That's what we get a lot today. Negative 1 is correct. And now, how do you get that divided by 28 off of there? Yes, JR. You can do this. How do I get it? Isn't it 28? Was I reading that wrong? Oh my gosh, it's 38. Sorry, I'm old. My eyes are going bad. All right, so how do I get that divided by 38 off of there? Multiply by what? Nope, that would get the 1 off of there. I want the 38 out of there. Multiply by what? By 38. Somebody said to multiply by 1, and I said it wasn't that. Okay, I'm not. Somebody might. I probably had 2 people answer at the same time, and I heard the person who said 1. We don't get rid of the 1. We multiply by 38, not by 1. Then the 38s cancel. And holy cow, that's an easy one. I hope you didn't need your calculator for that one. 1 times anything is just itself. And is it negative or positive? Negative 38. Now, I know that sometimes it gets really tempting to shortcut. That's why I'm only giving you half the worksheet. Last year's students did all. You're getting half as many. Why? Because I want you to feel like I can actually get this done tonight, and I will take the time to do a good job because I don't have tons of them to hurry through. You get what I'm saying? That's why I'm cutting it down to half. So don't penalize me by not showing your work. Otherwise, I'm just going to say, well, heck, if they're going to just do a crappy job, I'm going to give them all. Because then they can just do a crappy job on all of them instead of half of them. I want you to do a good job on half of them. All right, sir, would you read me number 3? Yes. You're a capable reader. It starts with n over 3, I think. And then what? N over 3. Plus 6 equals 9. Cool, thank you. What's first step, sir? What do you think we should do first? Nope. Add, subtracts always come first. It's all right. Yes. All right, and that's gone. And then we have n over 3 equals 3. And from there, Julia, I know it's the last 10 minutes, but I still am with you. You still should be with me. How do I get rid of this divide by 3? You got it. Times by 3, times by 3. Make sure you show your work like this. N equals 3 times 3 is 9. Notice I had a little equation in the middle. That's what I'm going to be looking for. Do you remember me telling you if you don't show your work, you won't get the credit? I will only give you half credit for a right answer. Half the credit is for showing your work. Make sure you show that in-between part. Sir. Go ahead. Yep. No, because you'll only get half a point on each one. So bottom line, honestly, you just have to trust me on the showing work part. If it eventually gets to 5 steps, you're not going to be able to do that all in your head or even on a calculator because you're going to get lost. You got to show a little bit of work. So no, you can't just write the answer down. You got to show your work. Okay, that's all I got for the video for today. Actually, I decided to do one more up here. I had a very good question. There's a different kind. Everybody look at number 9. Just look at number 9 quick, and then I'll let you go. Number 9 is different. It's got a giant fraction. If you've got a giant fraction, you have to fix it by getting rid of the fraction part. Tell me, what part of negative 18 divided by p all over 2, what part of this made it have a fraction? I'll pause for a second. Okay, it was clarified that this is a plus, not a divide. All right, so I'm going to start by getting rid of what makes this a fraction. Watch. If I just go like this, you get there's no more fraction? So how can you do that mathematically? How can you get rid of that divide by 2? Yes, ma'am. Multiply by 2. You do that on both sides, and you don't have a fraction anymore. That's how you start. Whenever you have a giant fraction, you got to multiply by, oops, I'm wrong. That's a 2 down there. You got to multiply by 2 on both sides. Why? Because 2 divided by 2 will cancel each other out. That cancels that. And I'm left with negative 18 plus p equals negative 8. And from there, hopefully, it's only one step left. I bet you can do it. So the moral of the story, thank you for asking about that one, is when you have giant fractions like that, start by getting rid of the denominator. You multiply by that bottom number. Okay, and that's officially all I have for you for today.